Every public body shall give notice of the date, time, and location of its meetings other than special, emergency, or continued meetings at least 3 working days in advance by posting such notice on its official public government website, if any, placing such notice in a prominent public location at which notices are regularly posted, and placing such notice at the office of the clerk of the public body, or in the case of a public body that has no clerk, at the office of the chief administrator. Reasonable notice under the circumstances of special, emergency, or continued meetings shall be given contemporaneously with the notice provided to the members of the policy body conducting the meeting. Mrs. Tanner, has today's school board meeting been properly certified?
Yes, Madam Chair, on March 6, 2020, notice was provided fulfilling all criteria VA Code Chapter 37.
Thank you, Ms. Tanner. I call this meeting to order. Today's meeting is a continuation of our work session where we took an in-depth look at the proposed budget by Dr. Birdsong and staff. So today what we are going to do is review some follow-up items that were done and then have the opportunity as a board to pose some questions and get some further details on the budget. So I know that there are some individuals that need to come up and share some information. So what I'd like to do, Dr. Birdsong, is allow all the presenters to get through their presentation and then hold questions until the very end, and then after that, then we can do questions if that works for you.
That's fine, thank you. That's fine. Good afternoon, Dr. Gabriel, Mr. Clanton, members of the board and our community. As stated by Dr. Gabriel today, the purpose of the meeting, of course, is to review the budget and to answer questions that have been posed to us regarding the proposed budget. So at this time, I will ask Ms. Tao and Mr. Billups to come forward. Ms. Tao will be giving an overview of the operating budget. I know we've primarily focused on state-level funding as well as the CIP, and today she will give a brief overview of the school nutrition budget as well as grants. And then there were multiple questions during the last session about pay and compensation, teacher retention, and things of that nature, and so Mr. Billups is certainly prepared to address those concerns today. So if you don't mind coming forward. Thank you so much. And school board members, I provided to you a packet of information to include what I just reviewed. The first document is the school board's proposed budget, all funds, and I know this was generally reviewed when we first went over the budget a couple of school board meetings ago. But again, today I wanted to make sure that Mrs. Tao went over the school nutrition piece as well as the grants piece. Ms. Tao?
Thank you, Dr. Birdsong. Good afternoon, Dr. Gabriel, Mr. Clanton, Dr. Birdsong, and members of the school board. On February 19th, Dr. Birdsong presented to you the superintendent's proposed budget for 2021. She shared with you her proposed budget of $348.3 million. She is built around the 4 priorities: compensation, more resources for school, security and safety, and building maintenance. Last week, Mrs. Ingrams presented a comparison of the governor's, the Senate, and the House budgets. Mr. Hazelet also presented the CIP budget for 2021 in the amount of $17.1 million, of which $1 million is for bus replacement. What I want to share with you today is the school nutrition and grants budget for 2021. The budget for school nutrition is $20,200,000. That's an increase of $200,000 over the current year. And the budget for grants next year is $42 million. That's up $2 million over the current fiscal year. During the March 18th school board meeting, that's next week, we will ask the school board to adopt the following budgets for 2021, totaling $427.6 million, with a breakdown as follows: $348.3 million for operating fund, and that is based on the governor's introduced budget. School nutrition fund, $200.2 million. Grants, $42 million, and CIP, $17.1 million. So the total for all funds that we will ask the school board to adopt next week is $427,559,108. Thank you.
Mr. Phillips, you'll proceed.
Okay. Good afternoon, Dr. Birds, Dr. Gabriel, Mr. Clanton, and school board members. The last meeting, you had some additional questions, and I'd like to address those questions with you today. I'd like to first point your attention to the handout in your packet that refers to years of experience of employees on teacher contracts. This particular handout is representative of demonstrating the number of years of experience of the teachers that we have within Norfolk Public Schools. As you will see, the majority of our teachers, almost 38%, are between 0 and 3 years of experience. So that represents the largest group of individuals that we had. And I think we had already talked about that we had a pretty young teacher population. So that represents that. And followed there by 4 to 7 years at almost 20%. So basically 50% of our teachers have fewer than 7 years of experience with us. And so you can see how the chart plays out from there. The next document that I'd like to point your attention to is the one entitled Teacher Retention Data by Resignation Reason. And so what I used was the data from the 18-19 school year to give us a full picture of individuals who left us during that year. And the number one reason, representing 60 of the 316 individuals, representing almost 19%, they left for what they classified as personal reasons. Now, that can be encompassing of many different things. We ask them why and what does this mean, but if they don't tell us, then they don't tell us. So this could be a number of reasons why they stated there. And then shortly following that, somewhat closely, is a relocation, non-military affiliated. So again, in this area, individuals are pretty transient, and so they tend to move around a little bit. So that represented the largest. I highlighted desires a higher salary because that had come up, and you'll notice that that didn't even fall within the top overall 5 reasons from the folks who left last year. It represented 17 individuals, or approximately almost 6% of the total.
And if I may, Mr. Billups, and I want to reiterate that because we've heard a lot that teachers are leaving us based on pay primarily. And again, the purpose of providing you this data from last year is to provide you some solid data around why teachers are leaving. Yes, 5.38% of the teachers did leave because they did desire a higher salary, but we wanted to put that in perspective with other data points to include the personal reasons. And as Mr. Billups said, we could do I'm pretty certain in follow-up interviews conducted by human resources generalists, they can ask more probing questions about, why you want to leave. We understand it may be a personal reason, but sometimes people are not willing to give that information, and of course we can't force them to. But we can continue to do that, to interview people and then to document that.
Yes.
So we can have a higher level of data. So again, I just wanted to bring that to your attention because that's been stated several times that the primary reason people are leaving Norfolk Public Schools is because they desire a higher salary, and this data does not indicate that. Mr. Billups.
And the next chart that you have, or the information that I'd like to go over with you, is information related to the pay and compensation study, as well as to discuss the background and the history within Norfolk Public Schools to explain why teachers are not on the steps, not on their steps based on the years of experience. So I researched this quite extensively, and so here's the information, some of which I've already provided to you all, but I would like to take this opportunity to expound upon it for you. But if you go back, when you look at Norfolk Public Schools, as I had said, there were a total of 8 years in the salary history here where teachers were not moved any steps at all. And so it was early recognized that step placement on that then scale would not equate to years of experience because they were not moved. And so I broke this down in a couple of different ways. You'll see that for the following school years, teachers did not receive any salary increase at all, and they remained on the same step due to budgetary constraints. So that was 3 full school years, and I've listed that information there. Then there were some years within Norfolk schools, interestingly, where teachers received salary increases, but they remained on the same step. And so I've listed those years there as well. Basically, starting at the year 2013 to 14, all the way up for 4 consecutive years, there obviously was money in the budget that the school division could give raises, and that's what happened for teachers and everyone else. They received an increase, but there was no step movement. And I'm going to go through this, but then I want to come back to that particular point to pinpoint why that became problematic for the school division. And again, based on these years noted that you see above, there were a total of 8 years then that teachers were not moved any steps. So sometimes there was a raise given, sometimes there was not a raise given, but there was no step movement. Consequently, that affected step placement not equating to years of experience. So moving forward, we entered into the contract with the Siegel consulting firm to try to get this back on track as best as possible. So that's where you have the information there, where the goal was to somehow get the steps back on track, to look at equity levels, salary levels, all of that. That's what happened with the consulting firm. So then, after all that was done in December of 2016, and it was time to move forward for the 17-18 school year, there was a communication, of course, put out through former superintendent, and referencing 4 phases that this would operate under. And the first phase for 17-18, again, the new 30-step salary scale was created. Norfolk had previously been on a 26-step scale, and so a 30-step scale was created. And then teachers were then placed on that scale in such a way as to ensure that no teachers received a salary decrease. And then that part is where that was done through the budget office, because HR does not control the revenues and the funding and all of that. So we did not place the individuals on the scale. That was done through the budget office, and then we took that information, and then we were able to move forward. And so that's what happened with that. And in that first phase, the first pass, the scale was created. Teachers were placed on the scale, and then there was this way of how it operated. For example, if the increase was going to be less than $200, when they were placed on that 30-step scale, the teacher was moved up a step. If the teacher was only on grade 6 and above, and they received less than a $600 salary raise, they were then moved an additional step. So all of this is how it operated. Ms. Ingram was the senior director in budget at that time, so perhaps she will be able to give some additional insight into that, of how it all actually operated and regulated, because once it was done and given to us in Human Resources, that's when we move forward from there. Then you'll see that on year 2, phase 2, that's when the actually began being operated again. Teachers moved up a step in year 2, another step in year 3, and then now that we're in year 4 with another proposed step increase as well as a percentage increase. So that's how it happened. But I'd like to go back to the first page when I referenced that there were salary increases but no step movements. And when I see this, it was concerning, because it made me wonder if, because Norfolk had monies that they could give increases, it became questionable to me as to why were these percentages then not placed within the step for movement. So if you remember what I presented last week, the chart that I showed you when we talked about compression, if we had percentages that could be given to our teachers, it would have been better, in my opinion, to place that through the step movement, and then that would have helped to lessen the compression. Because if the money was there to be given to our teachers and our employees for a consecutive 4 years, then it could have been placed within the step to help with the compression issue. And again, I'm not sure how that happened. Perhaps Ms. Ingram can address that for you all as well. So that's what I did recognize with that. So that's really the reason. The first phase of the study was to, first of all, just get individuals back on a step so that again, they didn't lose any money, and now it's operated for the past few years with the step movement. So that's the explanation that I have for that. And then I know that there was another question regarding, in considering that, placing teachers on steps based on the years of experience. And here's what my analysis will say about that. Currently in HR, we have 3 human resources generalists, and they're responsible for the recruitment for special education, secondary education, as well as elementary education, and resource teachers. Extremely busy, all of them are. They're working on all cylinders at all times. They would be the ones who would be most qualified to be able to even determine what a step a person could possibly be on. That is not work that assistants could do. That is really not work that temporary workers could do, because that assessment of that is very critical and requires experience to be able to do that. And I can speak to this personally because in a previous division where I worked, we had this same issue. And we tried to hire temporary workers to do this work. And they could not do it because it takes understanding and knowing what counts as teacher experience versus what does not. And so just because you may have been a teacher at a church daycare or a daycare center or something, that doesn't qualify for teaching years when you're trying to place someone on a scale. And what we found is that the work that they did was really useless for us. And we ultimately had to scrap the work and go back to what we had previously did. And so we really wasted thousands of dollars. But it was an effort to try to do what we're talking about here, and it just did not work out at all. And then the other piece of it that would be concerning for me is that the funding part of this. For example, the financial impact that this would ultimately have. For example, here, of course, grant-funded positions, Title I jobs, special education jobs, state-operated program jobs, where the majority of the expenditures in those areas are the people. So if we had to go back and try to amend, alter, change steps, where does the funding come from? And most likely, if we did that, some of those positions would have to be eliminated in order to absorb the funding to do something different with the steps. All right? Then out of the operating fund, this would also take a chunk of money from that available funding, because what would likely happen is, if you remember, we're talking about teachers right now and their lack of step movement, but individuals in the categories of teacher assistants, custodians, bus drivers, office managers, administrators, principals, assistant principals, everyone was in the same category at that time. So if you move the teachers and you don't do anything for these groups, then that's going to come back, because folks are going to ask, then what's going to happen for us, because they too were frozen in their steps also for 8 years. So that would be something to consider. And then we always have to consider health insurance and benefit rates, because they factor in as well, and typically there are increases associated with those, and those would need to be absorbed. So those are the things that would be of concern at this point if we were to try to go back and implement the steps again. And then another factor that's thrown in there is the fact that although steps were not given in those 4 years that I referenced, a percentage increase was given. So if you give someone 8 steps, but they've already received a percentage increase that just happened to not be in the step years ago, in essence, you're almost now giving them another raise on top of a raise that they got years ago, but it was just not included in the step. No, that's a lot to say, but again, that was my analysis of the information that I had to work with. And I think that's it.
Thank you. I think there are questions, several questions. Yes, that will be.
Okay. Ms. Basine and then Ms.
But she had her hand up first.
Okay, Ms. Smith?
So I have a question about the years of experience chart. How were the ranges determined? It's clear that it's at every 3-year range, but what are we supposed to take away from that?
From this, I would take away that, as I said, the majority of our teachers have less experience.
I see that, but I just want to understand from a school district, what's the significance of the 3-year ranges
Sure.
that we're looking at?
Sure. And so, one of the questions or comments during the last session was around, why would we want to increase the wages of beginning teachers, first-year teachers? And so, one of the comments made related to that was that we have a young teacher corps, and that in order for us to remain competitive, that we really needed to consider providing a raise for our brand-new teachers. Right now, in the region, we're 6 of 7 in terms of, lowest salary. And so this data point was just to demonstrate that, yes, the majority of our teachers are very young. And so what should we do to be able to, I know there are other things we can do, but we certainly want to remain competitive as it relates to salaries.
So what's considered entry, mid, and high range, if we were to look at this? So 0 to 3 is considered entry, and then everything above that is mid to high?
So I would say 0 to 3, and of course, this is based on years of experience. These would be our brand-new beginning teachers, our probationary teachers. And then it just demonstrates teachers and their years of experience from no experience coming in brand new from college or a career switcher or things of that nature to 35 years or greater experience with teaching.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dean and Mr. Jordan?
So, thank you for providing this information. Honestly, I feel like some of it is reiterating what we talked about at the last meeting, and it would have been great to have this beforehand so I could see if at least some of the questions that I know I asked were answered. So to piggyback on what Ms. Smith just mentioned, so with the retention report, one of the questions that I asked is, based on the years of experience, what does our retention data look like? And that information is still not here. So, because one way we could look at it, yes, we have a very young teaching corps, which could say that we are doing a relatively good job at attracting, but with the low percentage of teachers in the higher years of experience, we could say we're not retaining them as well as we could be. And one of the reasons I wanted to look at the retention piece by years of experience is so that we could see whether we're seeing a greater exodus of teachers at a particular year of experience. Like, are we seeing more teachers leave the district who are at 10 years plus versus attracting the younger, the new teachers? And that might speak to, whether we need to target our salary increases at a particular year of experience versus, more of a whole-scale approach. So that was one of the reasons I was asking that particular question.
So let us address that.
Okay.
And Mr. Billups, please. So as we looked at some data points, I recall, and Mr. Billups can correct me if I'm wrong, it seems to be about the time of maybe step 10 or, around that time that we may be losing a greater more teachers than at other levels. And so I think it would be a fair assessment to say that we do a great job of attracting the younger teachers. And then, why are we losing teachers at maybe year 10? And I think one of the reasons, and Mr. Billups, please help me with this, would be around the salary. Because again, because of the compression, the years that we didn't get a raise and the years that steps weren't moved, then right in the middle is where I believe that teachers felt that they could leave the school division and get a higher salary.
Right. So with that in mind, so the question is then, why not target our approach to that specific,
That's a fair question.
group of teachers in that year, in that range of
But
experience?
I think that's a fair question. And so, I was thinking about that. All right, so with again, we're doing a great job with retaining or attracting at that
Attracting, right.
at that level. But the way I understand the pay schedule, the structure, regardless if even though we are targeting beginning year teachers to increase that salary, because of the structure of the salary scale, the teachers that have been with us for 8, 9, 10, 11 years would also get an increase based on the increasing the beginning teacher salary to maintain the structural balance of the scale. Does that make sense? So even though we're targeting first-year teachers, everyone else will also get a raise as well, just because of the adjustment that we're going to have to make based on that to keep the scale balanced structurally. Okay? Did I do well, Ms. Tao?
Oh, okay, I also pulled data. I'm not sure if this will answer your question. I pulled the data about the number of teachers we have on every step, and the bulk of our teachers are currently on step 4 with 428 teachers out of 2,580. That's 16.6%. Like we said, our teachers their years of experience don't equate their steps. So I don't know the years of experience on step 4, but I remember that gentleman from Blair who spoke at the public hearing, he was on step 4, but he has 7 years of experience. So I'm just going to assume he has 7 years. So teachers that are currently on step 4, we have 428 of them, or 16.6% over the 2,580 total teachers that we have. The next one is teachers that are on step 6, which is 194, or 7.5%, and I can share this later.
I appreciate that, but it still doesn't get exactly at what I'm trying to get at, because I think, Dr. Birdsong, I think you answered or acknowledged, that we do have perhaps a retention, a retention challenge, which is not unique to Norfolk only. But, I think as we consider our strategies and our approach for retaining our teachers, because I think we need to start looking at that data specifically, so that we can retain our valuable teachers who are 10-plus.
And we appreciate that.
experience. Yeah.
We appreciate that.
Mr. Jordan?
Okay, so first I support Dr. Birdsong's recommendation in terms of trying to increase compensation for all employees. I support that. I do have a couple of, one clarifying question. I like something for the board to consider. On the chart that we have here with years of experience of employees, is that years of experience with Norfolk Public Schools or years of experience as a teacher?
That would be years of experience as a teacher.
Okay. So what I like the board to look at is how we address, if there is a way to address it, how we can provide greater support for step alignment with our senior staff. We're talking about teachers now, but I'm really talking about employees. While at the same time being able to provide the the other compensation that we're trying to get to. So, for example, when we got the Siegel's water report, they focused on teachers and other employee groups, where they were on their step based upon their years of service with Norfolk Public Schools. So they were looking at years of service with Norfolk Public Schools. But if we were to use this chart for just years of experience in our teacher workforce, so if we went through 7 to 8 years of compression, then if you were in the first two bands here, 0 to 3 to 4 to 7, you were not with the district pretty much and experienced that compression. 8 and above, you would have experienced that compression. So what I was trying to get a understanding of was, and Ms. Tao was touching on a little bit, in terms of what impact have we had with those that went through the compression era towards getting on steps closer towards a year of service with a step. I know we couldn't do that because we knew how much it was, but I thought our goal was going to be trying to move employees or employee groups towards that goal, because we knew we just couldn't do it in one fell swoop. We couldn't even do it in 4 years. So to me, if we give everybody a step, so if you're been with the district between 0 to 4 years, you probably were brought in, especially the 0 to 3 group, at the time that we were trying to place people on the correct step. So when we hear individuals say, I leave Norfolk, I go to another division, I get placed on my correct step, and then I come back to Norfolk. To me, that churn is what we're hearing in terms of teachers trying to get on the right step and then coming back to Norfolk. I think the churn can have negative impact on teaching in the classroom. So, so to me, for the 0 to 3 group to get an additional step, if we haven't addressed the 8-year plus group in terms of service to Norfolk Public Schools in their distribution, we are providing salary increases to everyone and compensation to everyone, but we aren't really making movement in terms of those that suffered through the compression getting to the point that where they need to be in terms of the step. So what I'd like for the board and the administration to consider is looking at, is there a way for us to make movement for those who are 8 years plus towards getting closer to being on an appropriate step based upon their years of experience with Norfolk Public Schools, and do it in a way that we can still provide compensation for all. And so I know that's a little more nuanced, because if every year we just provide everybody a step increase, then the compression is never really addressed. It just, at least in my view, it kind of continues in terms of those that were in that compressed area. So to me, since we have so many, just using the teacher example, that are in that 0 to 4, looking at the 8 to 23 or what the other data says in terms of those who went through that compression era, if we want to reward the veteran teachers, and if we want to try to retain those veteran teachers so that they don't feel they have to leave the district and maybe come back and maybe not, then I think this is an opportunity for us to look at something we can do, at least in the middle. I know we can't do it all, but to begin to take some action to reward those who have hung on for so long. Because what we saw in the report was, whether it was teachers, whether it was principals, whether it was whomever, in the teacher example, 73% of the employees we had at that time in 2016 were on a current step lower than expected. So if there's been some movement, whatever it's been, through whatever process, to me, having that information to see what the movement was helps to inform the board and administration whether or not we are making progress on the compression issue, even as we are continuing to provide salary compensation for all. That's what I'm trying to get at, and that's what I think we should consider in the budget proposal that we send over to council.
Okay. Ms. Campson?
Mr. Jordan, do you mind if I, am out?
Yeah, I hope we
Yeah.
can, I hope we can have this, yes, this is what I wanted,
Work
yes.
session.
So it sounds like you're saying, and I'm not sure that's, but the way I interpreted what you said was that perhaps the middle group would get a double step for a couple of years to
Could
kind
be.
of help make that jump? Is that the kind of
Yeah,
suggestion?
I am saying that, since we talk about equity in individual circumstances, they're rather treating it as a number, let's treat the employees as individuals. So yes, there could be something where if we find that you're stuck, if you're in that middle group and you went through the years of compression, maybe they may get a two-step where somebody else got a 1, and maybe somebody who's 0 to 3
Right.
may not get a step if you just got here, so.
So, for the last 3 years, once this started, everyone's gotten a step?
Correct.
Okay, so teachers that are now moving into year 4 have always had a step and were not involved? All right, is that what, yep, that's. is
That's
that
my
right?
understanding, yeah.
So you're looking at people that are in the middle level, step 4 to 8 or so, or whatever that middle level was?
Plus.
And I'm looking at it more, Ms. Campson, from the years of experience, because you could be, we use an example of step
Well,
4.
I understand that.
Somebody could have been stuck on step 8 for 7 years.
Yeah, I know, I spent that
Right.
many years stuck
Yeah.
on a step, and as a principal, we didn't get
Right.
any, we were compressed too.
And the data showed that, so,
So if you took those teachers that got caught in the step compression, who were already, everybody's getting a step, we don't want to start the same situation with our new teachers that we got ourselves into with these teachers. So if we started in the middle, and for the next few years gave them a double step, over time, they would catch up.
that's what I'm recommending.
All right,
That's actually what I
I've
thought we were trying to get to, based upon where we
I
started.
did too,
Yeah.
but I wasn't here when they did all this.
Yeah.
So I thought that's what the step compression was doing, and now that our great administrative team has shown us that that's not what we're doing, I was surprised. I thought that this had always involved helping them catch up.
But I think we have done some, because if some adjustments were made, and that's what I'm trying to verify, if we were able to get the distribution chart today, like the distribution chart we had in 2016, the way I understood it was, just as it described that, that there were some adjustments. So if Mr. Stone, who gave his example, saw some adjustments, if some adjustments were made beyond just everybody getting 1, then the distribution should look a little different, even though it won't look significantly different, I would guess,
Well,
from
that's-
where we were before.
Well, then I guess that's what we need to know. First of all.
Right.
Where does everybody stand?
Well, that's the
well,
chart I'm trying
and
to
that's
get.
what I know.
And we
were
can't
here-
hire temporary people to do it
Which is why,
because it
well,
would be a
and
waste
which
of
is why I
money.
think that's, that's over the top of us being able to do. I think we probably understand what we were being told. But my question is, had they started doing that, then each person that had been missing steps would have already been caught up with 3 of them. You know, if you get an extra step. So if you're at step 4, and instead of going to step 5, you go to step 6 this year. And next year, you go to step 8. And the following year, you go to step 10. Then look how many steps they would have caught up as they were running after their number of years of teaching. If every year you do a double for those people, not with the first 3 years, certainly, or the first 4 years, because they've never had compression. If you take the compression people and the people that were actually here in the building, I mean, not the building, in the school district, if you take people that were here when this started, when this stopped, and that were here in some of those years, and you gave them double ones for a few years, you would catch them up to a certain extent.
Right.
It's an impossibility to make it all perfect.
Right.
But I certainly,
Trying to make
I
progress.
certainly think you have a good suggestion of doing some double stepping, if that's indeed what you were saying.
Yeah, I don't,
And if I may add too, because I specifically asked this question, can we say with confidence, for example, that a teacher who is on step 7 right now, can we really say that that teacher has the same number of years of experience as another teacher? And I've been told that we can't say that right now. So even if, for example, we had 2 teachers on step 7, one may have 11 years experience, one may have 13. So even if we moved them 2 steps, again, there's still some misalignment because they essentially should be on the same step. You see what I'm saying?
Well, what I was thinking after listening to Mr. Jordan, and I think this is a good point that he's brought up.
And I'm not
is
disagreeing.
how to address it, is if you look at, in other words, your step, those two, they would have a different number of years that they had been in, and once the one that had less years in would level off, they would drop out of doubling, and the other person would continue doubling.
Right, but what I'm saying,
Or
I'm not
somebody to
disagreeing with
manage it.
that. I'm agreeing with that 100%. But what I'm saying is, say, for example, Dr. Gabriel and I came in the same year as brand-new teachers. She may be on step 4, I may be on step 7, and although we have the same number of years of experience. So if we each get a double bump, there's still misalignment with the scale, because we should be at the same level on the scale based on our years of experience. And so, again, I ask that question, can we say with confidence that everyone on a step 7, for example, has 9 years of experience? And I did not hear that. So that's why there's a deep level of work that needs to be done.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
I'd like to
It's
make
like
us.
they didn't do a thorough enough study or something.
I think
Well,
I can't
I think
respond to that. I
when they
just
did
know.
the study, and I'm not gonna speak for Siegel Waters, but I think that
Either.
when they did the study, that was their first look at, figuring out years of experience, et cetera, in order to even give us the data to begin with. But now that information is outdated. So, in my, thought process, it doesn't sound like we would be able to get the correct data in the amount of time that we need in order to.
Well, not for this year,
No,
maybe.
But
I
for
have to
next year, this could be something that
I
we would consider
look-
as a board to look into, because I think that it is, looking at our teachers who have stayed within the district to definitely address this issue, and not just with teachers, but also with principals and other staff members.
Because what I find is, and I thought I was still had the floor, I'm sorry. Okay. What I found last year was the teachers that came to me upset were the ones that had been in the middle of the compression, and they were seeing so much more with the teachers falling behind them, or having, the ones that were following them were their salaries, instead of at least remaining even, they were going up like this, and so they would say, I make $50 more than the person with less experience than I do. And so that was this compression, and having lived through it, I know how upsetting it was at the time, and I can see that teachers continue to be upset with it. They have every right to be, because they're right. It shouldn't have been done to them. It's the teachers already support the district buying stuff. All this other corrections, I know we had a recession or whatever, but it wasn't still going on the last few years. It should not be done on the back of teachers. So it seems like that we should continue to strive to do something to help those teachers that really got hit hard with it. And so I think that Mr. Jordan has raised a possibility that we've even refined more, as we've discussed. And yes, I know this is due to the city, and we certainly can't redo everything right with this kind of research, but it should certainly be something we could be looking at and have it at the top of our list when we get those salaries going next year.
Well, and I was going to say, from my vantage point, I want folks to correct me if I'm wrong. For me, it's still two different things. So we used the example or the concept of a doubling. I mean, that's just something that was thrown out there.
Right.
So I understand, at least I think I understand the work that needs to be done to get down to the individual assessment level. But right now, what we are pretty much doing is making a big bucket recommendation for how we provide compensation to the whole. It's not employee-specific anyway, if at least I think, in terms of our proposal. The information that Siegel Waters got that showed where people were on the step, I don't think came from the temporary person going in and evaluating each person. It probably was some computerized information that we provided. What I'm saying is that I think we do have time as a board to consider making an adjustment for our compensation package in this proposed budget, so that even if you had the example that was used of Dr. Gabriel and Dr. Birdsong of both being pushed, but still having the inequity between the two. As folks in the middle, they still would have been adjusted, even as we take time going forward to get each individual on the right step. If we don't do that, then what we have is there's still inequity in terms of their pay, and there's inequity in terms of them, of the entire system. So I'm saying that I think we should be able to look at those folks that are in the middle and seeing if we make some type of adjustment now in this compensation package, that even if it doesn't solve each individual person, in terms of support and morale and recognizing those that did live through the compression, they still would have gotten something additional than those that did not have to live through the compression. I think we still have to find ways of making some progress around the compression.
Well, and I'm agreeing with that, that's what I
How you
said.
do it, I
Even if
don't
they
know,
don't go
but I
up,
think-
even if they don't go up to ever close it, if we just did some to get them a little bit closer to where they were. This is a lot to have to, I mean, I'm sorry, I
And-
didn't raise my hand. Oh.
Yeah, but this is
They're gonna drag
completely
me off.
operational. And so I would say that this was really a question for Dr. Birdsong to even see if this would be manageable, because I don't know if your proposal would be manageable in order to bring it back to the
Yeah.
board to even.
And I hear what Mr. Jordan is saying, and I think it's important, because I do believe that a lot of our teachers who have stayed with us, they need to be rewarded for their stability and commitment to Norfolk Public Schools. My only concern is, again, as we would definitely still need to look at individual cases because of the inequities between teachers that have the same number of years of experience, but are still on different steps. So making sure that whatever is done for one teacher who has 4 years, the other teacher also is provided the same level of compensation. So I get that. So we would need to consider how we could do that and being able to identify who those teachers are specifically. And so I would have to lean on my expert, Ms. Talon. I know I'm putting you on the spot right now. How could something like that be achieved with the structure of our pay scale?
All right. Well, I guess I have to work very closely with Mr. Billup's staff. I really need them to look at the records. What I can do is I can ask them to pick teachers that are currently on step 20 to 30, look at those records, and see what it would cost to give them an extra step. That's the only thing I can do for now, but I need to work with them to make sure.
But that goes back to my question earlier, being able to identify the range, what these ranges really mean to us in terms of that compression. We can't arbitrarily choose a range.
I think that if we're gonna go
Especially
down
for
this
structural
road, we need to go
balance.
down the road the right way. And we need to have the data, we need to take the time to look at every teacher's experience and have that, because it sounds like we need to have that anyway. And so I would be in full support of making this a priority for our budget for the following year, after we get the data, if that is something that the board would like to do. But to me, it doesn't sound like we could achieve what we want equitably in the time frame that we have in order to bring this budget forward.
And the good news is, based on everyone's concerns, and I know you received this information at the last meeting, the document is titled Salary Schedule History from 2017 to 2021. If you look at the proposed employee raises, it appears that the longer you have been with our school division, the more increase you should expect. For example, if you look at a teacher on step 3, for example, they would have a 3.04% increase. But if you look at a teacher on step 23, he or she, if I can follow along, would have a 3.8% increase. So in a sense, this is rewarding longevity.
Which chart are you on?
The chart that you got the last meeting, and I'm sorry to refer back to that, but you did receive this the last meeting, salary schedule
we got it.
history from 2017 to 2021.
So I'm gonna let Mr. Clanton ask a question.
Well, yeah, my question is, we can't get this done in 2 days because we're supposed to have budget uploaded and all that stuff to us by Friday. But based on what I'm just hearing from my colleagues, I totally agree that we need to really focus and figure out where that middle group
Sweet spot.
looks like, and if it means doubling or whatever else, but we need to have a sound recommendation to come back from the administration, and I don't think it's fair to the administration to pigeonhole you all in a tight time frame and expect you to give us the right answer. But I also don't agree that the board should make some arbitrary decision that could essentially create a greater problem down the road. So my question really is, should we be talking about, in this particular budget here, maybe identifying some funding to get the necessary support that you all need to ensure that we can have a solid report back to us about recommendations? So if you need additional temp staff or whatever it may be to research this, because we've already got you've got day-to-day things that you're doing, but this is going to require some above and beyond and some extra things that I would think Dr. Birdsong to come in. So maybe identifying some funding in here for the necessary support to come back with a stronger recommendation that addresses the issues that we're spoken of today.
So I thank you, and I hear you. I guess where I'm still a little confused is, so all of the budget, much of what we are proposing is some actual and some theory. So the recommendation for, let's say everybody gets a step increase, is based upon the idea that everybody that works for us now will be working for us after July 1. We know that doesn't occur. So I'm trying to avoid trying to do a push down into the index cards. But we are putting forward, and I think Dr. Birdsong is correct, that what we're seeing here is what was done and accomplished as we move to the 30-step scale to begin with. I'm saying that if we can get a chart to get the administration to just look at the distribution, that kind of gives us a apples-to-apples comparison of the distribution. We know that we have now, just in the teacher area, a significant number of staff, 57, 60%, who are between 0 and 7. I'm just trying to get a snapshot of those teachers in the middle. What steps are they on? And I don't see.
You don't know that. That's what he's.
Let me.
Okay, then I'm
You're,
confused then.
how do we not know what? How do we not know? I thought what we don't know is the inequity that may exist in the example. We should know, even on this chart, if we have 2,450 teachers, what step each of those teachers are on. They may not be on the right step. There may be inequity between individuals, but I haven't heard anyone say that we don't know and don't have the ability to know what step 2,450 teachers are on.
But that's what Ms. Tao just said that she pulled. That's the information. You said you had a certain number of teachers and they fell on this step, and that's
Yeah.
what she pulled.
Right, so that's, but we don't, I just was saying,
She said she could provide that.
I thought you were I thought the argument was being made that we didn't have the information to consider.
We don't
To
have,
consider
we
doing
don't
something
have the
different.
information, we don't have the information that Mr. Billups is speaking about and what the example was that Dr. Birdsong shared. I'm sure they could pull, like she has, we have, 30 teachers on step 4 and 50 teachers on
Yes.
step 10, but that number is a number that could be, it doesn't correlate
Doesn't
with
take into
what the years of
consideration.
experience are. So,
Yes.
so even if we were to try to do something right now at this minute,
Yes,
it's still not fixing the root of the problem.
I agree.
So,
And nor,
I-
and nor does this. What
No.
I'm trying to do is start to take a bite at the apple, and I'm suggesting that because we have said academically, that part of our goal is to retain the teachers that, because we don't even know if years of service equates to being effective, but operating on that theory, if our goal, if the board's goal and accountability goal and the administration goal is to retain some of our experienced teachers, which our data is showing you that we haven't done well, or could do better, maybe I should say. I'm just simply asking that we look at doing something different than just simply saying everybody gets a step increase. Maybe, I don't see why we don't have an opportunity to look at that data and make that determination. The board decides that it's too much,
Almost
then
like
so
an
be
A and a
it.
B option. I mean, we've got an A option which says give everybody
Right.
a step increase, and then you're saying, is there a way of going back and seeing if there's something extra that we could possibly do
Yeah.
within the next 2 days?
Why you keep
I mean,
saying
because we got to, because we get the budget, I mean, everything goes up on Friday. I'm just saying it was
Well,
Wednesday.
my
But-
only, I get that part, but the idea of, we're asking for what we need, right? So if we do the analysis, and based upon whatever the governor signs,
Which we still don't know. 'Cause
still
we
don't know, could offer some opportunity. But if we're gonna be asking for what we need anyway, and we determine that this is a step that we can take, being able to quantify and qualify what that is allows us to then come back and to consider whether or not we want to make an adjustment. If the board decides we don't, then so be it. I just think we should have the information so we can make that determination.
I'm going to allow Dr. Birdsong to wrap up this portion of the topic because I know that we have another portion of the presentation that we need to get to.
What I wanted to do, I remember during the last public hearing, there was some concerns about school security officers. And I remember, not verbatim, that some of the community members may have had concerns about them being placed at elementary schools because they didn't want them pushing children around and things of that nature. So I wanted to dispel the myth about the role of the school security officer. So I've asked Selena, one of our veteran, Selena Cherry, one of our veteran security officers, just to talk about her role as a school security officer and to talk more about, yes, our number one priority is safety and security, but it's also building relationships with children, building relationships with families and the community, and her work in that area. So, Ms. Chair, if you don't mind coming forward. And her support.
Make sure that all of our,
Mr. Walker.
Can we make sure while she's coming that all of our parents fully understand that there will be no guns in the elementary schools,
And in
as has
looking
been
at
rumored?
the data from the region, it does appear that, I think outside of Hampton, please correct me if I'm wrong, all of the other Region 2 schools have security officers at the elementary level. And I'm not saying that we need to do what everybody else does, but I am saying that we would like to have another layer of safety and security for our children at the elementary level. And so that's why I included that in my budget proposal. So I've asked Ms. Cherry to come here today. I've had the wonderful experience of working with her for, I guess it was a few months or maybe longer.
Yes.
You know, we've done quite a few things together professionally. And so I wanted to give her an opportunity to speak to her role as a school security officer. Ms. Cherry.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Dr. Birdsong and board members. My name is Selena Cherry. I've been working for Norfolk Public Schools for about 20 years now. I really enjoy doing what I'm doing. I wanted to say that we as security do more than just enforce. We are about bringing the kids together. We're about communication, talking to the kids, just greeting them in the morning time and being mentors to them. So we do a lot with the children, but we're not the enforcers. And that is one of the most important roles with the students, is in making sure that we are being there for them. Because sometimes, like I said, they need that moment to de-escalate. Sometimes we have to walk with them to calm them down, to get them back in class. Sometimes they just need someone just to listen to them in the morning time. But most of the time, when it comes to safety and providing that safety, those kids will come and tell you, Miss Cherry, I got something to tell you. John did something. John did this, or Sarah did this. So they feel comfortable with you. They trust you if you allow them to. But if they feel like they can't trust you, they're not going to tell you anything. Like I said, I really enjoy working with Norfolk Public Schools. I love the children. I love being a part of the schools. I have worked in various schools, from elementary to middle to alternative setting, and from all demographic backgrounds. So I can simply say that it is wonderful to just be able to greet the kids in the morning time. Mr. Walker, you want to add something?
Yeah, and also, as Ms. Cherry is sharing with you all today, I think Ms. Cherry is a very humble spirit.
Yes.
She's a very humble spirit. So in her role as security, she could probably tell you 100 different stories of
Yes.
not only being security, but being a parent.
Yeah.
She's a mother. She understands the role of being a mother to these children, and that in the role of being security, it's an observe and report. So there's no de-escalation to the point that we have to touch children. They're observing
Yes.
things in and around the building. Students come to them, and with our demographics, we have diversity in our school division, and with that diversity, our security officers bring to the table not only their role as parents, but also looking like our students and giving them a chance to grow. Ms. Cherry will share some other stories, which I'm sure, because she shared them with me, to the point where she's talking to parents. She's even helped wash clothes for parents. So I'll let you tell your story. She's such a humble spirit, but if she really were to open up, she is a real good picture of what the other men and women are doing in these school divisions.
I like
in
to
our school
say,
division.
when I worked at one of the middle schools in Norfolk, and Dr. Gabrielle, I was pleasure working with your mom. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful lady. We had a couple of kids that was homeless, and the parent would bring her laundry. She'll bring her laundry on Monday, and the principal allowed me to wash her laundry, and on Fridays, I would fold the clothes, put them in a plastic bag, and I would give them to her. But, it's sometimes, we just have to do what we have to do when we're in these schools, because it's about caring for the children. It's not about me or it's just about the children. And that's why I get up every morning faithfully to go in there to make it about the children. And I give 110%. That's what I do. I started a uniform closet for the kids at the time, because they did not have the proper things to wear. I washed their clothes when they got off the bus. Sometimes they would hand me their uniforms and say, Miss Cherry, can you wash this shirt for me? I would do it. I would take them and, to class. So it's a lot of things that comes with this job. And it's not about enforcing and handcuffing and taking down, and no. That is the last thing that we have our law enforcement for that. So that is the last thing that, as a security officer, that we do.
And I'd like to say with Ms. Cherry, this is the look of 46 men and women who are part of the school division. So the look that you see in Ms. Cherry, I can assure you that if any particular security officer that you were to engage in this kind of conversation, they will have the same types of stories.
Yeah.
Real stories about dealing with our children, bringing them in, and Ms. Cherry will also share with you, these children come back, even after they graduate, to give thanks for the guidance that they've had. And it's a thankless job, because you love to do it. Security is a tough job. You cannot come out here in the morning and they have the same compassion as teachers. It's not about the pay. It's about seeing those students matriculate and have a safe environment as well as a fun environment. So we make sure that all of our security officers, even in our initial interviews, understand that perspective
And
of their
also
roles.
grow up to be productive citizens. That's the most important thing. When you see those students out there, I mean, I went to TCC and I saw so many students at TCC. It was just amazing. And some, like I said, you can't count them out. the ones you think is the ones that's gonna be successful. I'm telling you, I was just amazing when I just saw, I just had to hug them and love them and just tell them how much I'm just so proud of them. And then some, like I said, you a little mischievous, but when I see them always, they say, Miss Cherry, you remember me? I say, yeah, you remember how bad I was? I don't remember that. Yeah, so I don't remember the bad things. I remember the good things, yeah. Because we're not perfect, so, you know, as children, I did a few little things I probably wasn't proud of, but I'm here, you know.
Thank you, Ms. Cherry. Did the board members have any questions for Ms. Cherry?
Okay, we're going to keep our questions real short because we are to be ending 5 minutes ago. So I'll start with Ms. Martin.
Along the lines of being there for the children, I know that from the principal's perspective, you're also there as that extra layer of support to the administration. Can you talk about your experience with that and what your role is in that capacity?
Along with administration? Well, we work closely with them in making sure the building is safe. So when it comes to doing any lockdown drills, tornado drills, or anything that he feels the need that, or he or she feels the need that we need to do at that particular time, we just take care of it. But most of the time, it's just about, doing drills, or if he call and say, okay, Ms. Cherry, I need you to have some paperwork or something like that. But it's I would say it's just working closely to make sure that we are providing a safe learning environment for the students. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Mr. Jordan, Ms. Basine, and Ms. Smith.
So I appreciate what Ms. Cherry said. I saw Mr. Rollins a couple weeks ago. He knows my daughter who went to Granby better than he knows me. So when he sees me, he asks me how is Paige doing. I sent her a text message, and even when she was in high school, I knew that it was the security guards that she trusted most. So I want to make sure I'm clear. There's no issue for me about the Ms. Cherries of the world or the Mr. Rollins of the world or any other the individuals that I know are out there doing good things. But I'm trying to get understanding from the board's perspective, what is the job description, the role, and the expectation associated with the recommendation? That's one. And and what we're trying to achieve with it, because as Ms. Campson was saying a moment ago, it's a lot of different misnomers or misrepresentations out there. We got the recommendation in terms of the staffing. I'm just looking for the recommendation in terms of the specific job description and role and expectations as it deals with security officers at the elementary school level. And then the other piece for me was the equity piece. Norview High School, I know, has asked for, and this feels like they need support based upon their current data. So I was trying to figure out if we were able to provide some support based upon what principals may be saying that they need, in addition to whatever else we may provide as far as additional support. I think the equity piece.
Okay. Ms. Basine?
Yeah, Mr. Jordan spoke to some of part of my question, and Ms. Cherry, I appreciate your years of service and for being that caring adult in the building, and I too have seen many like you that have been there for our students. So speaking to some of the things that Ms. Cherry and Mr. Walker spoke to, I feel like also begs the question, why not additional school counselors, social workers, and psychologists? Because we know that they too are caring adults in the building. So can you elaborate on what data was used to determine that security resource officers rose to the top versus the other support positions or the other professionals in the building?
As an executive leadership team, we did look at a lot of data. And as I shared before, at this time, we have 0 security officers at our elementary schools. And that is very concerning to me. We've had some incidents that have gone on, not only this year, and I know Mr. Walker can speak to this, and it is very concerning that we don't have that level of support for safety and security at our elementary schools. there should be at least one dedicated individual in every elementary school who can provide that level of safety and security. And so we don't have that right now. And so at a minimum, we should consider placing at least one security officer in our schools. Yes, we already have school psychologists, at the elementary level, as well as social workers, and they play such an important role. But at this time, we don't have a single security officer. We don't have that one person who is there, whose sole responsibility it is to walk around the building, to walk within the neighborhood, to be a set of eyes for the building principal and teachers, to greet the parents in the morning as they're walking in, talking to them about what may be going on in the community, telling them to look out for certain things, sharing information with them, things that could be of value as it relates to mutual combat or anything else that might occur in a school building. We don't have that. And again, looking at our surrounding school divisions, they're all equipped with this resource, and we're not. And I'm concerned about that.
And can I also share in what Dr. Birdsong says in the fact that, if you look back, which is such a morbid thing to think about, but you look at the culture of where elementary schools have been under attack. We're currently talking with police because even in the redirection of our culture of students in elementary schools, this is where you have an opportunity to reach out to them and have conversation with them about safety. These students are living in tough neighborhoods, and our responsibility from doorstep to doorstep, from coming home to coming to the school building, the voice of security in these elementary schools will make a big difference, and building relationships amongst these students, these young students starting at an early age. There's a big struggle now, whereas I just met with Chief Boone as he did a presentation on guns, and the focus now seems to be we need to reach more down towards the younger student. The simulation of guns that students are using, the bullying and things such as that, in the world of comparison of having counselors versus security officers, I think it can't be looked at in the verses, but the collaboration. Because if in fact some of these students are dealing with issues of mental illness and things such as that, it's recognized by these security officers who are building relationships to see those types of things, and then we can infuse our current practice of responding to mental illness at that level, because we're missing it. Our middle schools are becoming more challenging across the country because we're not reaching out to the elementary schools to try to redirect some of the behaviors. So it's a big part of it. So I know we gave a overview of what security does in the sense of being, compassion and things such as that. But you're in the neighborhood. You're part of the neighborhood. Their relationship with the SROs, even at the secondary level. And for Norfolk, the unique thing, but yet good thing we have is that we have, for instance, Norview Elementary, Norview Middle, and Norview High in that same area. And those kind of relationships that come out of the neighborhoods where our elementary schools are now transitioning up has the same look that we can support our elementary school kids with building those relationships and teaching them things such as, not touching guns and a major thing that they're going out and watching their older brothers do. A lot of our elementary schools are just emulating. They're bringing guns to school because they're emulating what they're seeing from their older siblings. And unfortunately, it's a tough topic to talk about publicly, but it's real when I, as a security director, we're going to a building and find that we have a gun in one of our elementary schools. I was just totally, thought even with 40 years of law enforcement, I'm still baffled, but I'm still, believe that we can touch these kids and we have to touch them in elementary schools.
Ms. Smith?
Oh.
Well,
Okay, I wasn't done, but I'll let you go.
Thank you. I like to say I do support the security officers in the school. My concern is the phasing of them or the approach that we're putting them all in there at one time, and not considering or being presented other options such as the psychologist or behavior intervention specialist. We have schools, elementary schools, that have significant numbers of behavior issues within those schools that ultimately lead up to some type of security incidents that require security to handle. But to me, that's on the back end of the problem and not the front end, and that some of our elementary schools have students who are facing trauma that we as adults have never even, can't even imagine what they're dealing with. And that's not for the security officer, that's for someone on the front end to be able to assess, address, and help these students to be able to be productive in the classroom, as well as for the teachers to be able to teach properly in the classroom. I think we're putting, in totality, the cart before the horse, and I'd like to see more of a phasing approach of this, and for us to consider some of these security officer positions for something like behavior intervention specialists, even if we have to share them amongst a couple of schools. I think our students, our teachers will be better served at this time with that type of combination and not all or nothing.
Thank you. Okay, then we're going to go Mr. Clanton, Ms. Campson, then Ms. Martin, and then we'll wrap it up.
So I just want to point out that when I look at the superintendent's budget, that I see school security officers as not a other piece, but as a piece of the puzzle when we talk about building school climate. And also like to point out that not only does the budget show school counselor increase, psychologist internship program, positive behavioral interventions and support, behavior specialists, this becomes a part of the whole puzzle. And so my question is back, because I can remember my school security officers, and just like you said, that environment. And a little bit was touched on it, but I want you to really emphasize the other things that you do that are important. You're that other set, because our teachers have to maintain our students.
Yes,
Administrators
they
have
do.
other things that they're doing. Office staff is in the office, but you're possibly making sure doors are locked. And we're talking about an elementary school level where I had a lot of parents who've reached out to me because we've had someone enter inside a building from another area that shouldn't have been there. So if you can really emphasize that and talk about the climate and how you support that.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that, because we wear a lot of hats, a lot. And I can give you a day, matter of fact, I'll just start how my day began. In the morning time, I'm pretty much out there doing buses. So I make sure all the buses are in, like I said, at the door, greeting the students. If something happens in the building, I still have to respond to that. And that is providing that safety, the security piece, some de-escalating, and that's what I usually do. Trying to talk the kid down or whatever. But we have to worry about locking the doors. Yes, we do. Constantly checking the grounds, making sure we answer any call that arouse in the building, whether it's a cell phone pickup or whether it's a kid just having one of their moments or whatever. Because sometimes that takes time, because if they are upset and we have to remove them from that class, we kind of calm them down and walk with them, give them that piece, or maybe they need to go to guidance and calm themselves down. So trespasses, we like I said, we have to report that. Anything that goes on in that building throughout the day, we as security, we have to do it. And we play, like I said, we wear a lot of hats. If you need a Band-Aid, they come to security. Security, my finger is bleeding. Sometimes, like today, the nurse was out. So today, okay, I knew trained first aid, so okay. Oh, this hurts, okay, ice. Put your name down here, give you some ice.
I don't interrupt you, but like at a middle school or in one of our high schools right now where we have security,
Yeah.
and someone who was on the grounds who shouldn't be there,
Shouldn't be, yeah.
you become that buffer.
Yes, I do.
You also are trained to also notify if it needs to escalate to contact the police
That's it.
officers.
SRO.
Right now at the elementary school levels, we don't have that buffer.
You don't have that.
Okay.
So like I said, in middle school, we do have SROs, and they don't have them in elementary. They need security in their elementary school, because parents come in, they're angry, they're upset. Like I said, they don't have anybody. It takes time for a police officer to come. Sometimes they'll call up to the school and say, can you send your SRO over for support. You're right, they need it. I mean, you know, other schools have, other districts have it, Chesapeake, they have one security officer. You need that person in that building because, like I said, you, not only the parents, the students, sometimes you need that person in there for those students. Students get upset. Teachers don't sometimes, they don't have time to take those kids to guidance. That's something that we do. I mean, they call us to do an escort. You know, got an upset kid, or, you know, that kid need to get the guidance. Teacher's not gonna stop teaching to go and take that student to guidance. And that's where security plays a lot of role. We play a lot of roles in these schools. It may not seem like that's sometimes that we're just there to enforce, but that's not what we're about. We do so much in those buildings. Like I said, from nurse, from counseling, I mean, you name it, security does it.
But I think on the big picture, I think on the big picture, you may want to see that even in my role, giving guidance, building teams such as working with facilities management, working with the IT department. There's a group of us that work together to give structure and guidance so that we can relinquish some of those things in the school division, especially in elementary school. When you talk about locked doors and unlocking doors, we're currently looking at ways that we can support in those areas so that we can make sure that some of these concerns that we have, we are in some of the tough neighborhoods and some neighborhoods we're not. So in the area of looking at who would need what is not only just driven by numbers, it's driven by the crime statistics that we have in those areas.
Okay, Ms. Campson.
I think it's an unfortunate time that when parents send their children off to school, they can't always be sure they'll come home.
That's right.
I think it's an unfortunate time when our teachers come to work and they have to worry that they'll be safe in the school. You're right, at the elementary school, there is no one. As a principal, I had to go during pizza and a movie night where the younger children were letting in their gang member siblings and friends and confront them and take care of it myself. And that's just an example of what happens on a continuous basis with the principal as the sole security. I think that's unfortunate. I think it's unfortunate that there's become this and or. You know, this situation is, well, if we get security in the schools, why don't we get more counselors, which we are doing to balance that. All schools have counselors. That's being increased. And school counselors, by the way, are not therapists. They are neither trained or certified to deliver therapy. So that's something that we do need to also keep in mind. We also need to make it very clear that there was never a suggestion by anyone on the school board to put guns in our elementary schools. And I think that that's an unfortunate thing that started. I've met with some groups that had the information come from another person, that was the goal of what we were doing. And that was never a discussion about putting guns in our elementary schools. It was security staff in the schools to do the very things that you talked about. And I think we need to focus on that, and we need to focus on having them in every school. Who's going to pick and choose which school doesn't get the security? If I was going to come into a school and do something terrible, I would certainly choose the school that didn't have the security. Every child in our school, whether they're in a little school or a big school, are equally important and need to be kept safe, and that's our responsibility. So when you start sharing positions, then you're leaving schools wide open, just like they are now. So I think that that's something for us to keep in our minds.
I was going to say that, so that was going to be my third point, so I'll
Well,
put
our
that at the
minds are
beginning.
linked, as we know.
Yeah, I think that would be sending a really bad message on, oh, you guys are important enough to get security and you guys aren't, or you guys are so terrible that you get security. I mean, it's just, you would have to do it across the board. The other thing is, one of the things we talked about when we're going through these drills in the schools, like you were talking about, you know, the lockdown drill, this came up. And it was, you know, if the school has to go under lockdown, there's nobody. Like the principal, all the administration, everyone's under lockdown, and then what? And having that extra layer of security to be able to have that open communication and talk, you know, and to be outside the building or, you know, where in a prominent spot to be able to handle the situation and to wait for the police and have that communication. I mean, that, or whoever the necessary responders are. I mean, that's really important, and we don't have that right now. And then, I mean, the other thing is, I think this, you know, some of this has definitely been blown out of proportion in the public. And I'm just saying, why not? Private schools all have security officers. You know, I mean, it's not like they're somehow, you know, our kids deserve that too. I guess is what I want to say.
Yeah, but with all the stuff that's going on in the world today, I mean, we have to have I think security is needed. I really, truly do in all the buildings. Because like I said, you just said about making that call. If a gunman is on property or near the property, I can hear them on the radio calling Mr. Walker or Mr. Jones' office for some support. And, you know, why should they have to do that? If they had a security in that building and that security can do what needs to be done immediately, that time is wasted. Could be something tragic may happen, and then we got to answer to that. You know, and I don't think we want to do that. I mean, really.
Ms. Cherry, Mr. Walker, I really appreciate you coming, Dr. Birdsong. I thought this was a great idea for us to give us a glimpse into the hard work and the many hats that you all wear and the rationale behind why this is a part of your budget proposal. So our next meeting is going to be next Wednesday. That's when we will be taking action on the budget. And so with that being said, this meeting is adjourned.
No. There are some areas in here I have specific questions about.
That's okay, but we're gonna go ahead and end the meeting right now.
We still have questions,
No, but-
though.
I understand that,
And
but
I
even
sent
when
them
we had that-
beforehand.
I
The other
understand that
meeting, I
you-
suggested to you that an hour is just not enough
Yeah, I
time
thought we were having a
to,
full-
to discuss some of the issues that we had. And so what you've done here is you've allowed certain presentations to take place, and you've narrowed the meeting to just those presentations with very little time to discuss other issues that we as equal board members here may have questions about.
I'm
That's
not
right.
stopping you, Ms. Smith, from emailing, getting questions from Dr. Birdsong, from Ms. Tao, from anyone else, but we have a certain amount of time that we need to abide by. So I'm not preventing you.
All
from
set by you, Noel.
But,
Ms. Smith.
so to your argument,
No,
Dr.
no,
Gabriel,
this meeting is adjourned.
I had previously